things. All right, I'm gonna fill in space. How you guys doing today? Okay, that was not enthusiastic, but I'll take it. So, welcome to GDG Chicago, our annual Google I/O extended recap, whatever you want to call it, event. I'm Dan. I am one of the co-organizers of GDG Chicago. So I guess Google I/O, in case you don't know what it is the Google's big developer conference. So there's that. We're gonna recap it. How we doing? I'm not doing great at filling space here. So we got Dina back there, who's also one of the co-organizers, taking pictures. Yeah, thanks to Google Girl Develop It for sending out some of their organizers for us to help out. And I'm going to hand it off to Joel, because I've spoken my mind.
Sorry, y'all. Hope y'all having a great evening. Thank you for coming out to the nerdery. I'm going to kick it off actually to Greg here, so he can give a little bit of talk about the nerdery. They were actually one of our big sponsors at our last DevFest. So, woo! Yeah, give a round of applause. Greg, just run down.
Yeah, cool. I'll keep this short and sweet because I know you guys didn't come here to listen to me talk. So, as you mentioned, my name's Greg. What I do here is I lead the engineering team here in Chicago. So that's kind of my day-to-day, but I also do a lot of our community involvement, run a couple meetups myself and things like that, so I love to be super involved in the community. Real quickly, if you haven't heard of the nerdery, we've been around for almost 15 years. We started in Minneapolis, branched off to Chicago about 7 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago branched off to Kansas City, and a few years ago branched off to Phoenix. So we have about 450 nerds across 4 offices. What we do is companies will partner with us to build mobile apps, web apps, things like that. Couple things that are different about the nerdery, at least in my opinion, and what make it cool is more than half of our team is software engineers, so very dev-focused culture here. And we're not a shop that focuses on like Java or Ruby or digital consulting or project management. We do all of those things, so we don't kind of silo ourselves into a specific tech stack. So we do Android, we do iOS, we do Ruby, Java, .NET, you name it, we can do it. And we also don't silo ourselves into specific industries. So literally in the last few years, we've worked with retail companies, finance, logistics, kind of all across the board. So if you like things changing quite often, we are the place to work. So yeah, that's us. And like I said, I'm in between you guys and the fun stuff. So I will pass the mic back off.
Thanks. Let's give the nerdery a round of applause. Thank you for hosting us today. Cool. So today we have an awesome panel of everyone that attended, that's on the panel actually attended Google I/O in some way or form. So let's give a round of applause for our speakers. Jerrell, you want to come on up?
Sure. Can you all hear me? Yes. I'll just speak really. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so my name is Jerrell Mardis. I'm one of the speakers here. I was at Google I/O. It was a really fun event. So I would say I'm an organizer for GDG Chicago West, but we're kind of taking a hiatus right now. So maybe in a few months we'll have another meetup. But I'm also an organizer for Chicago Roboto. So if any of you are interested in an Android-specific conference in the city, check us out, chicagoroboto.com. We usually have our conferences around April of the year, or the 3rd week of April. Every year, so that was pretty fun this year. And the nerdery, they were one of our sponsors, which they helped us out a lot. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about what I learned.
Cool, awesome. Up next we have Brittney. Brittney, can you come on up and just introduce yourself to the crowd?
Hi everyone, I'm Brittney. It was my first time going to Google I/O. Yeah, it was my first time going to Google I/O. It was super exciting. I never would have thought, like, if I had to imagine, like, in January, like, oh, you're going to go to Mountain View, the land of, like, all the Silicon Valley people, and go and see this amazing conference. I never would imagine that. It was a really fantastic experience. I just recently joined the Android developer team at my company, so it was a really cool way for me to be able to take what I'm learning and apply it to like what's new and what's coming out by Google, as well as learn a lot about accessibility and design for what makes apps more helpful. And just like what was introduced, I'm one of the co-leaders of Girl Develop It. Definitely come and check us out. We've got a swim coffee happening tomorrow, so if you want to come and work on some of the cool stuff that you're learning about tonight, you're more than welcome to join us.
Awesome, thank you for being here. Up next, we also have Arelia.
Hi everyone, I'm Arelia Jones. I'm along with Brittney, one of the track leaders of Girl Development in Chicago. I'm a developer at Sprout Social, transitioning from design developer to front-end developer, so it was good to hear some of the new document KPIs that are coming out. And I also work with Coders Space where we teach web development to high school students, so I get to take that knowledge back to Girl Development and to
Cool, awesome, thank you for speaking again. And finally, we have Jeremy.
I should probably turn this on. Yeah. I'm a developer at Go Health. I dev mostly in web at work, but in my free time I do web and a lot of Android, as well as some hardware stuff.
Awesome, thanks Jeremy. Come on down. So, as we're getting started, if you haven't already, follow us, GDG Chicago on Twitter. Just some quick things that I forgot to pitch of these events beforehand, but up in June 20th, we're going to put this meetup event. We're going to be doing a Build on Actions event at 1871. So if you want to learn about how to build actions for your Google Assistant, a lot of cool things in the Assistant we're going to be touching on today. Up in July, we're going to have a Cloud Next extended event. So we're going to be talking about all the other awesome things coming from the next Google conference. So that's coming up in late July. The cool thing is Android things hit 1.0. I don't know if y'all saw that announcement, but definitely some cool things there. So you can kind of do like IoT embedded stuff. So some things that you're probably wondering, well, what can I do with that? You can do something like flowers that react to your emotions. This was at I.O. Kind of showing that the colors change to your facial recognition. So if you're happy, it'll go to like a more like a green color, but if you're angry, it'll be red. The challenge was just trying to detect angry. It was actually really tough to get angry. So another thing you can do is as simple as building your own LED Google Assistant and tying that in with like IoT like messages and stuff. So that's pretty neat. The reason I'm highlighting this is I know a few, I don't know if they're here today, but we're interested in how they can get started with embedded hardware and using Android things. There's actually a program that's, you have to apply by May 25th if you want to apply and get some assistance from the Android Things team, and they can reach out and sign up. If you're interested, come back and we'll put these slides back up.
The Android Things tent had more than just the flowers too.
It did.
They had a 3D printer built entirely on Android Things. They also had some robots that drew people's faces. So they took a picture and then it ran on paper for a little while and it drew out your face. They had like the generations of hardware that were supported all on the walls. And then the flowers used machine learning to see your emotions, and it also used machine learning to recognize your face. And if the flowers would follow your face around as you walked past. So they had a lot of fun interactive things in there, and that's usually why the tent was capped. You had to actually wait in line to get in most of the time.
I got there, but I think that the flowers do my
It was broken when I got there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I got there the third day, so
Right.
whatever. Cool. one of the overarching themes of the conference this year was making good things together. So with that, and I'm sorry for hiding there. Let's see if I can- Welcome to Google I/O Extended. So that's our kickoff. So what we did at Google I/O Extended was the first thing, before the event even started, myself, Jeremy, and Dan, Dina would have been there, but next year for sure she's going to be there. We had a great, amazing summit with North America. So we met with other people who do similar events. So we learned from things that worked with their groups, things that didn't work with their groups. We planned around a lot of how do we better work to deliver good events for all of you, our community. So it was awesome to be there. Some quick pictures from I/O. You kind of see GDG Chicago like there. So we got representation on the wall. Just some quick photos there. We had a concert from Justice, so if you like music, we had Justice and Phantogram, so it was a pretty cool thing. So fun. We found someone with a Windy City Dev Fest shirt at I/O. That was super, super cool. I don't know if you No? Okay, I don't see him in the crowd. But that was just like randomly walking by, so it was cool to see someone made it all the way to California wearing the swag, so thank you. It really meant, it's good, awesome to see people like that. So things got weird at I/O too. Our friend Dan here.
I like to have a good time at I/O.
He's wearing a glitter unicorn rainbow wig.
With a mullet
wig.
I wear that at the concert every year.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. The funny story about these googly eyes is where Dan was situated and sitting, he would have had a direct eye contact with like Sundar if he actually wore his keynote. So can you imagine like giving a keynote to like hundreds, like a live stream of hundreds of thousands of people and just seeing this guy staring at you? So it would have been pretty funny. Let's kick it off. So with building good things together, this kicked off into a really inspiring story, and let's see if we can play it.
Hi, I am Tanya. This is my voice. I use Morse code by inputting dots and dashes with switches mounted near my head. As a very young child, I used a communication word board. I used a head stick to point to the words. It was very attractive to say the least. Once Morse code was incorporated into my life, it was a feeling of pure liberation and freedom. I think that is why I like skydiving so much. It is the same kind of feeling. Through skydiving, I met Ken, the love of my life, and partner in crime.
It's always been very, very difficult just to find Morse code devices, to try Morse code.
This is why I had to create my own. With the help from Ken, I have a voice and more independence in my daily life. But most people don't have Ken. It is our hope that we can collaborate with the Gboard team to help people who want to tap into the freedom of using Morse code.
Gboard is the Google keyboard. What we have discovered working on Gboard is that there are entire pockets of population in the world, and when I say pockets, it's like tens of millions of people who have never had access to a keyboard that works in their own language. With Tanya, we've built support in Gboard for Morse code. So it's an input modality that allows you to type in Morse code and get text out with predictions, suggestions. I think it's a beautiful example of where machine learning can really assist someone in a way that a normal keyboard without artificial intelligence wouldn't be able to.
I am very excited to continue on this journey. Many people will benefit from this, and that thrills me to no end.
Cool. Yeah, so that's a really inspiring story. She was actually attending Google I/O Yeah, she was in the crowd. And it's just so cool to see. Accessibility was a huge theme this year, connecting to the audiences that maybe we don't think about every day, but it was really big to see. So great stuff. In fact, she worked with the Google team to deliver Morse code support in the Gboard app, and I think you actually had a video you shared.
Yeah. So in one of the, I think the accessibility sandbox, and I don't know if my mic is on or not, but in the accessibility sandbox, they had a couple of devices set up where you could play this Morse code game. And I put the camera towards it at some point. There's a poster with a mnemonic for each letter of the alphabet so that you can start learning what the Morse code symbols are. So for like, I don't remember what they are, but like I think submarine is 3 dots. So you'll have a picture of a submarine with 3 dots on it, and that will remind you that S is 3 dots. And the game will take you through a few letters at a time so that you're like gradually building on the letters, and it really helped me start to like go more quickly and start learning some of the Morse code symbols.
Yeah, that was super cool to see, especially there. So with that, I was going to put the quick few keynotes and talk about key announcements.
Exciting to be a technology home. We are excited about how we can approach our mission with renewed vigor thanks to the progress we see in AI. Healthcare is one of the most important fields AI is going to transform. If you go and analyze over 100,000 data points per patient, more than any single doctor could analyze, we can actually quantitatively predict the chance of readmission 24 to 48 hours before, earlier than traditional methods. It gives doctors more time to act. Another example of one of our core products, which we are redesigning with AI, is Gmail. We call it Smart Compose. So as the name suggests, we use machine learning to start suggesting phrases for you as you type. All you need to do is to hit tab and keep auto completing. We are rolling out.
So did anyone actually get that? Like, I just got it today. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
I tried it today. I think I responded to our email thread with some auto completion.
AI in the works,
Yeah.
2018. Yes. No. Yeah. It's super cool to see. I mean, just how not only can it empower and change the field. Sorry, I'm hearing the ringing too. Not only can it empower and change the field and things that we do day to day, like sending an email, but using AI to parse like medical records and like history. As Sundar was saying, you can do millions of events, more than one doctor can, at least not to that level of attention, so each person can get that great care. So they're seeing advancements, they're doing some field trials, I believe, in India and other parts of the world, and it's proven to be a huge success. So it's awesome to see.
Smart Compose to all our users this month, and hope you enjoy using it as well. So we're bringing a new feature called Suggested Actions. Say, for example, you went to a wedding and you're looking through those pictures. We understand your friend Lisa is in the picture, and we offer to share the 3 photos with Lisa, and with one click, those photos can be sent to her. By the way, AI can also deliver unexpected moments. So for example, here's this cute picture of your kid. We can make it better. We can drop the background color, pop the color, and make the kid even cuter. Or if you happen to have a very special memory, something in black and white, maybe of your mother and grandmother, we can recreate that moment in color and make that moment even more real and special. All these features are going to be rolling out to Google Photos users in the next couple of months. And today, I'm excited to announce our next generation TPU 3.0. These chips are so powerful that for the first time, we've had to introduce liquid cooling in our data centers. So we've worked hard.
That, I don't know if any of you here is like a hardware geek, but that's like intense. Like hardware cooling, liquid cooling all those racks. I mean, the amount of petaflops those things can handle, it's crazy. I mean, is anyone here like working in the space for machine learning, big data, stuff like that? No, nobody. Okay. Well, it's super cool, and you gotta totally see it. When I saw it in person, I was like geeking out because I love seeing all that stuff.
On with WaveNet, and we are adding, as of today, 6 new voices to the Google Assistant. Let's have them say hello.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm your Google Assistant.
Welcome to Shoreline Amphitheater. We hope you'll enjoy Google I/O. Back to you, Sundar.
Let's be honest.
Oh, wait,
You got a little.
So, yeah, you can also have John Legend. Yeah. So they actually got John Legend to record his voice, and he can be your Google Assistant when you wake up in the morning.
No.
Yeah.
That's not what they said.
Limited voice
It's only for limited actions.
Sure. Okay, Jeremy. You know what? You can have John Legend say specific things to you, like wake you up in the morning.
Sing you happy birthday.
Oh yeah. He's saying happy. It's gonna be great.
Either way, I'm setting it up for my sister.
There you go. That's gonna be dope. I can't wait to see
So what
that.
they showed in the keynote was John Legend was telling Sundar at 1 o'clock he has margaritas. Yeah.
I think that was true too. I think people actually got margaritas with Sundar at 1 o'clock somewhere. Yeah, that's cool. Super cool.
Annoying to say, hey Google, every time I want to get my assistant's attention. Now you won't have to say, hey Google, every time. We call this continued conversation, and it's been a top feature request. Are kids learning to be bossy and demanding when they can just say, hey Google, to ask for anything they need? Now we've been consulting with families and child development experts, and we plan to offer Pretty Please as an option for families later this year.
Let's say you want to ask.
So before we get to the super cool one, the 2 things there. Did you guys see the continued conversation bit?
That was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, what they had? They had I don't know, it was KD was one of the speakers there, but just being able to continue a natural flow of conversation, saying like, what was it, Pelican game thing?
Yeah, so you can say like, hey Google, and then ask it a question and continue on. You don't have to keep saying, hey Google. Like I personally don't like saying, hey Google. I wish they gave us a way to change the keyword or the hot word, but they didn't announce that. Yeah. So at least you only have to say it once now.
And then the Pretty Please is cool, because I know like my younger cousin, he comes over and he talks to my smart assistant, he's like, hey, play this song, play that, play this. It kind of trains your mind into not being almost demanding something, like, give me it now, right? I mean, it was super cool. So now you have to say, please, can I play a song?
There was also like feedback too. So, you know, a little kid can say, pretty please, could you play Mickey Mouse? And you're like, oh, thank you so much for being so kind. And then it'll be like, sure, I'll play Mickey Mouse for you.
I loved it. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. I'm going to turn that on for him. But then it might get annoying for me, but now I'll see. Cool. On to the part.
Google to make your haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second.
The amazing thing is the assistant can actually understand the nuances of conversation. We've been working on this technology for many years. It's called Google Duplex. It brings together all our investments over the years in natural language understanding, deep learning, text-to-speech. By the way, when we are done, the assistant can give you a confirmation notification saying your appointment has been taken care of.
We gave you
Cool. So
I just want to ask a question: Is anyone else here terrified of this new feature? like it's really cool, but I hope it never comes to market. Like, I get enough, telemarketers calling me down. I can just see it. They're just gonna automate everything.
Don't answer.
Jerry, what do you think about it?
I mean, the technology's awesome. At the same time, it's like a lot of people are freaking out and it's not even out. So I can't even imagine what's going to happen when it does come out. I don't even answer the phone if I don't know the number, so I don't care. But it just depends on the person, I guess.
Brittney, any
I had an interesting conversation with someone in line while I was going through security to go to the conference, and we were both saying we feel that there should be some sort of prompt before I actually engage in a conversation with this assistant. I know whenever I call and talk to people who are using a phone number through Google, like Hangouts, they'll usually say something like, "Oh, you're connecting with a call from Google," or something like that. So I feel like they're probably going to do something in that capacity with the assistant. And then fast forward to this week, I did see some headline confirming that there would be some sort of notification to say, "Hey, you're about to connect with Google Assistant." So that way there's hopefully not as nefarious of activities happening with it.
Yeah, I think they must have received some sort of criticism after the announcement and made the announcement that they would notify you that you're talking to a Google Assistant. I was really surprised when the demo started to hear how human-like the voice sounded, because I was expecting a Google Assistant voice, and that's not what the voice is. Has anyone seen the White Christmas episode of Black Mirror? Yeah, I had just watched that episode with my brother, and I'm like, I texted her, I'm like, the cookies are real, and the robot uprising is happening now.
Yeah, they showed off the technology for the text-to-speech a couple months ago. It was like a preview, and it was a website where they had the real recording and then the assistant recording, and you couldn't tell the difference. The only way I could tell the difference was listening to the sound in the room in the background, so you could hear her voice bounce off the walls. That was the only difference I could tell. So it's kind of scary at the same time. It's kind of awesome because it's gotten to the point where they break up sounds by syllables, and then they're able to patch them together with machine learning so seamlessly that it sounds almost identical.
One of the things that I took away from it was, did you guys see the that? You didn't have to do that. What? That's crazy. The robot is kind of teaching itself. I mean, I was thinking about it, and I don't know if y'all want to think about this too, but what if the assistant could talk to the assistant? Like, if it could say, like, and maybe like speak to say that, "Hi, I'm the assistant," and like radio, like phone waves that maybe a human can hear. Something on the other end can listen to it and then book it all digitally. It could just be data flowing through that pipe. Skynet. That's all I can think of.
Hopefully it's better than my two Furbies talking to each other.
That was terrifying.
No, I don't. Of course not. They're not at home right now.
If you want a nightmare with Furbies, just look up the Furby organ. You're welcome.
Okay.
Our place at CES in January. We're working with some of the best consumer electronic brands, and today I'm excited to announce that the first smart displays will go on sale in July. From staying in touch with family with broadcast and dual video calling, to keeping an eye on your home with all of our other smart home partners, to seeing in advance what the morning commute's like with Google Maps. We're thoughtfully integrating the best of Google and working with developers and partners all around the world to bring voice and visuals together in a completely new way for the home.
Yes. Is anyone jealous of like Amazon, where they have like the Amazon, what's the show? Yeah, the show, and it has like the Alexa come up. Finally, we have them. It's in July. I can only imagine the apps. I mean, that you could probably build on that thing.
They showed them off inside of the Actions tent and the Pay tent. So they had them in both areas. So the store tent had like a seamless interaction with the assistant for checking out. The one they had was you could buy a cookie, and you could use like your Google Pay, and it would go to the store, and you make the app, and you interact with it with voice and everything. The other one at Actions were just general apps. You could interact with things like Spotify, Duo, all those different things where you could make a full visual interface for your assistant actions, and it was completely seamless. It's also bringing into account a new UI for everything. So it's completely new. You'll start using it, and it's just something different that you get to play around with, basically.
Is that the same technology behind the magic mirror and triangle phones? Or is that a different?
That was a different one. So they had a demo where they had like a Faraday cage where you walked in and there was a mirror, and the mirror had a screen behind it, kind of like the one you saw go around the internet a couple years ago, except for it was fully interactable. It basically said, this clothes is in the room. So it had like NFC capabilities with the clothes, and as clothes was brought in, it would show up in the list of store items. And then you could click it and add it to your cart and then check out, and you just swipe your phone and then it would check out with Google Pay, and then you just take it out of the room and it would go as out of stock in the store.
Yeah, go ahead.
How are they going to build the actions on those? Are they going to use Android Studio, or are they going to use
I can answer that.
web apps? Or
Yeah, so the question was, how are they going to build stuff on it? It sounded like when I was speaking, I think it wasn't the patent. What was the second one you mentioned?
That's Google Assistant Actions.
The Google Assistant, yeah. So what I saw was essentially imagine like the Google spreadsheet, and you can go and put in different columns, different things are going to be on each page. It's a very like simple. Yeah, really simple drag and drop. Well, you can put like pictures, words, what's going to happen next, yes or no, affirmatives, and that builds out. But what they told me in that tent was that that's not going to be out immediately. That like these devices are going to come out first, and then it's all going to be kind of like a slow rolling thing throughout the rest of the year. But there's also supposed to be some sort of developer option for these devices for like games and something a bit more complex. But they also said like if you don't have programming skills, you can do it also.
Which was one of the draws of the assistant in the first place. So yeah, they're trying to go both routes with the assistant, mainly because a lot of the technology in Actions are controlled by them in the first place. They really want to make it an open platform though, so it should be 100% interactable and developed for. It's just not going to be out of the box when you get the device.
Cool. Next.
With the new Google News, we set out to help you do 3 things.
Yeah.
First,
yeah, they announced the news app. So it's Google
I literally fell asleep at that point of the video.
I wish I had the picture. I couldn't find it. Actually, I was gonna actually put it and like prompt it.
In general news, the app is redesigned so that it gives you curated news for your interests. Based on machine learning, it decides the kinds of things you like on what you want to dismiss and whatnot. It takes all of the different sources for one news story and puts in a full coverage, and then at the bottom it shows you like fact checks and stuff like that. So it's meant to be kind of like a answer to the whole like fake news and are you sure you're getting your news from a correct source? It's available on the Play Store now. It's just called News. It's pretty good, but like I don't understand why it was part of their keynote.
Yeah, I think we all kind of did. Really important, but yeah.
Android P. AI underpins the first 3 themes in this release, which are intelligence, simplicity, and digital well-being. With Android P, we partnered with DeepMind to work on a new feature we call adaptive battery. It's designed to give you a more consistent battery experience. And then with this understanding, the operating system adapts to your usage patterns so that it spends battery only on the apps and services that you care about.
Has anyone in the room done the P beta on their phone? Well, they'll get to it, but the battery life on it, for the folks that flashed it, it's been pretty rock solid. It's actually been awesome. So I know like Google's been talking about like, the sleep, where they sleep the app, huh? No, was it? Do you understand where you flip it over? No, it was like something with the battery. It had something
Wind
about
down?
Huh?
Wind down?
Yeah, maybe it was, wind down. And then with this, it actually works. It's using AI to determine what apps you're using. So it's pretty cool to see.
I'm gonna say, I have an iPhone and these features are much more useful than Facebook.
You don't like face crack? You don't like an emoji? You sing a song.
Brightness learns how you like to set the brightness slider, given the ambient lighting, and then does it for you. in a power-efficient way. With Android P, we're going beyond simply predicting the next app to launch to predicting the next action you want to take. We call this feature App Actions. Slices are a new API for developers to define interactive snippets of their app UI that can be surfaced in different places in the OS. If I type Lyft into the Google search app, I now see a slice from the Lyft app installed on my phone. Lyft is using the Slice API's rich array of UI templates to render a slice of their app in the context of search. And then Lyft is able to give me the price for my trip to work, and the slice is interactive, so I can order the ride directly from it. Pretty nice. I'm really excited to announce MLKit, a new set of APIs available through Firebase. With MLKit, you get on-device APIs to text recognition, face detection, image labeling, and a lot more. And MLKit also supports the ability to tap into Google's cloud-based ML technologies.
We think we can help users with their digital well-being in 4 ways. We want to help you understand your habits, focus on what matters, switch off when you need to, and above all, find balance with your family. In Android, we're actually going to give you full visibility into how you're spending your time. The apps where you're spending your time, the number of times you unlocked your phone on a given day, the number of notifications you got. We're going to really help you deal with this better.
Android P will show you a dashboard of how you're spending time on your device. We're making improvements to Do Not Disturb mode, to silence not just the phone calls and texts, but also the visual interruptions that pop up on your screen. We've created a new gesture that we've affectionately codenamed Shush. If you turn your phone over on the table, it automatically enters Do Not Disturb, so you can focus on being present. No pings, vibrations, or other distractions. Android P will help you set up a list of contacts that can always get through to you with a phone call, even if Do Not Disturb is turned off. So we created Wind Down mode. You can tell the Google Assistant what time you aim to go to bed, and when that time arrives, it will switch on Do Not Disturb and fade the screen to grayscale. Today, we're announcing Android P Beta. And with efforts in Android Oreo to make OS upgrades easier, Android P Beta is available on Google Pixel and 7 more manufacturer flagship devices today.
So, if you have any of those brands, try and flash it. It's super dope.
No mention of Samsung though.
Well, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory though, because this is the first time that Treble from O is becoming relevant. Treble was when they separated the hardware layer from the actual software layer, making Android way more valuable for porting over to other devices. So since Samsung refuses to put stock Android on their phones, they would not partner with them for a beta. But these other systems are happy to put stock Android on their devices, and since the hardware layer is only up to them, everything else is up to Google, they just have to update the hardware parts and the rest is completely flashable, very easy.
They do have some customizations though. I flash P on my Essential phone. I'm probably the only one with Essential phone in Chicago, but I did flash on there and it does have some customizations. So I think it's really nice that now you have the choice of putting a future version of Android or a version they recently released on a different device other than the Pixel or Nexus.
It's pretty good. I mean, in terms of from a beta perspective, it's pretty, like, usually I don't flash betas on my phone, but this is actually pretty good.
Snapchat doesn't work.
It does now.
It does now.
It took them a day and they fixed it.
Cool.
You have to clear the storage cache to fix it. But the other thing I noticed was this is the first time they put out a beta with release candidate APIs and SDKs. Usually when they put out the beta, they're really, really early and it's really buggy. But when I checked the SDK manager, a lot of the APIs and SDKs were all marked RC2, which is release candidate 2, which means they're way farther along in their software development line for their beta than they usually are, which probably explains why it's way more stable.
I know the one question when I was sitting at the keynote a lot of us had was what dessert was P going to turn into? My idea was peanut brittle or pancakes. Or popsicle, yeah, that was a good one, Arelia.
Pineapple. No.
That's not a dessert. I mean,
Yes, you're right. Okay.
It's a tasty treat.
It is
it's a tasty treat, yes.
Yeah. So going down the line, Senator Arelia, what was your favorite feature, like from P? Like, if you had to like pick one thing that you could take away.
When you're ready to switch over. Yeah, when I'm ready to switch over. I think all of the health conscious features. I'd be excited to use some of those. And then I don't know if the visual positioning system, so that's using Google Maps with the camera embedded, and there were a lot of features where they're embedding different camera features, but visual positioning system with the camera embedded into Google Maps, so that when you're looking at the map and you have your camera on, you can see the image of where you are, as well as this direction south. This is the way you want to go. Much more helpful than following the dog around. So that is something that I'd be excited to have.
Yeah, they had a really cool demo. I don't know if it's gonna come out in maps where they had like a fox, like if you're, using your Google Maps for walking directions, and a fox is like leading you where you should go. They used augmented reality to overlay, your directions like left or right, like signs and stuff like that.
And it popped up like store names and ratings. And I know that somebody like 3 down from me goes, "This will only be awesome if Clippy is added."
Clippy tell you make a left. Brittney, do you have anything that you took away from P beta?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm definitely having a little bit of FOMO because I just got a Samsung 9 and I was thinking about getting the Essential phone, and now I know I could have gotten an Essential phone and got to play around with P. I also really like the tools to try to help improve like our consumption of tech. That was another big focus, along with accessibility throughout the whole week. That kind of got kick-started at this keynote of talking about, we all know that we have a lot of things that we do on our phones, and we also know that there are times that we need to peel away from it. It's all about learning how to carve that balance, and Android P seemed like it was a way to strike that balance even better, or give you some suggestions. I really like the ideas of like wind down. Like I'm pretty dedicated to like do not disturb. So I like to see more of that kind of things, those kind of things coming out. And then yeah, the maps was really cool. So I'm really looking to see like more a strengthened feature of AR and VR within it, because yeah, all the stuff that they showed with maps was really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean the do not. It's almost like the health around using technology, right? It's very easy. I mean, a handful of us probably lay in bed at night and you're just there swiping, and before you know it's 2, 3 in the morning, and you're just like, oh man, I gotta wake up in like an hour or 2, right, to get to work.
I forgot who it was, but I think it was the gentleman who was giving the keynote about this feature. He said he went on vacation and he's like totally guilty of being on his phone too much, and his wife just took the phone away and was like, "You're not getting this back for another week." And he was really angry at first, and eventually, like I think maybe even half a day later, he started thinking like, you know what, this isn't so bad. And so he was just kind of saying like there is a beauty to life still of like peeling away from your phone, peeling away from your technology, and seeing what more has to offer. So I thought that was a really great capture of all these different types of features.
Yeah, I mean it's even in our day-to-day, right? How many times have you gotten up to walk around the office if you're sitting at your desk all day? You're staring at a screen for about 8 hours, water, just talking with people. It's kind of things that when you're in the zone, you're in the coding zone, you're just like coding away, but it really can long-term build up to burnout, or just not getting enough sleep and ultimately impact your health. So it's awesome to see very tiny things make a big impact, right? Jeremy, anything you want to add from Pete? Would you like?
So with Android Wear, that was kind of one of the focuses already, so I wasn't surprised that they continued down that route. I'm kind of more interested in a lot of the things they introduced with like navigation, which I thought was interesting, seeing as how navigation has been the way it is since basically day one, except for physical buttons and software buttons. They're an option to turn on with P Beta, so it it's really hard to get used to. I'm actually still trying to get used to it. But at the same time, when you swipe up to go to app switching, it shows like your four bottom buttons, kind of like your launcher does, but it guesses the app that you want to go to, and instead of actually going into your launcher to look for the app, and there's things like I'll put my headphones on and it'll like connect to Bluetooth, and I'll swipe up and it'll be like, there's Spotify and Google Play Music. Or I'll swipe up and like during the day it knows like this is the time I message somebody. It shows like Messenger and LO or whatever I use. So it's just like you don't even have to go looking for your stuff. It's very quick and it just knows what you want right away. The other thing that bothered me originally was that in O, they added like the double click of the app switch would take you to the most recent app. Like I would double click the middle button and it would do nothing. It would just like open Assistant, and I'm like, no, that is not like the last thing I wanted. Yeah, you can swipe right and it will go to the most recent one. So it takes a lot of getting used to, but I like the small things they put in there to make it so you don't have to go in your launcher and look for what you're trying to get to.
Sprinkling like kind of like AI machine learning into even our devices that we use in our day-to-day is really cool to see. Jerrell, anything?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a feature, but it's one of the themes that I saw at Google I/O this year is Google's becoming more opinionated as to the design, what they're, like the guidance they're giving the developers, us, right? So, so the things that we see with the release of Android Jetpack, it has a ton of tools and libraries that you use there. They have a ton of documents on like design patterns, you know, like what you should use. Like if you're a new developer and you want to build an app that connects to a database, what should I use? So they're recommending Room now. They're actually recommending things. I think in the past they said we built these awesome these tools. You all decide what you want to do with them. So now they're saying, okay, we built these awesome tools. We also built these libraries and have design documents for you. Now we're going to help you along the way. So I think that's much better to cater to the developer community, giving some type of guidance.
This coming from the guy that refuses to use them because he's old and fashioned that way.
I will not use fragments.
Oh, internal development.
No, so that's the nice thing that I like about a lot of the things they announced for Android was that it used to be if you asked a Googler on the Android team, how should you architect your app, they'd be like, it's your app, do whatever the hell you want. And then you look at the app and you're like, wow, it runs like crap. Why does this happen? And it's like Google kind of backed people into a corner on why it's so hard to find a good Android dev because they don't actually tell you what good practices are. They do say like, don't do this, but then everything else is open game. Whereas like they specifically went into sessions this year and said like, use a single activity app with fragments. Or if you want to do anything that's not like UI based, put it onto a worker. And they got very, very specific on things that you should and should not do. I think it comes along with a lot of the design aspect too. They're becoming more flexible with the design aspect, but it's kind of showing in their Android stuff as well because they do seem to care about how you build your app because it used to be like, people would complain that it was just so hard to get into. There were a lot of things you had to get used to when you started doing Android dev. Life cycle, states, all these different things like memory leaks, specific practices that would just cause performance issues that just don't happen in Java. So it's really nice to see that they actually tell you what you should do now. So the real question is, are devs actually going to do it?
Yeah, my one fear with this though is like now they're building all these tools and all these cool things that you can use to build this app, but when you have that obscure bug that you can't figure out, you have to go and search through a ton of different libraries that you've used to figure out where this bug is originating from. I think there's like a give and take with it. You should use what, if you can build it if it's very minimal, but if they build a tool for you, try that. But like I said, you may run into issues if you just throw everything that they have in like Jetpack and say like, I'm going to use paging, I'm going to use a work manager, I'm going to use this new navigational framework. It can get pretty crazy pretty quickly as to if you run into any issues. you have to search for a good bit.
I'm just gonna stick with what I usually say is each application has its own uses and the architecture will change depending on what you want to do. There are a lot of nice libraries, especially the new architecture ones that are very powerful and will help you make a better app and a lot faster. The real question is, does it make sense for your application? Like the lifecycle architecture components. They're very powerful and they're hard to get your head wrapped around them, but are they actually necessary? No, not really. If you want to use them, it makes your app run smoother and you don't have to worry about lifecycle as much. Same with the paging library. Do you handle a small amount of data? Paging library probably won't be used at all by you. Even if you want to use it, it's not really a thing. Live data is the same. People used to make their own loaders. I still make my own loaders. Live data is meant to be an observable way to pull your data without having to lock it into your life cycle or context of your activities. At the same time, it's super easy to do that just by making your own classes. So it just depends on how you design and how you architect your application and what it's going to actually do. At the same time, those libraries should not be ignored. You should look at them, but they're not mandatory.
Yeah, one more quick thing I'll add here too is any library that you're going to add in your app, whether it's one built by Google or any other third party, check out their GitHub project and take a look at the issues, take a look at pull requests. Make sure you understand what you're putting into your app because if you're bringing something in and it has an issue that you know that you probably are going to run into, that may not be a good candidate to add in your app.
I mean, that's just awesome. I mean, so these folks are obviously the developers, and I'm just here kind of moderating. For me, I was gonna say my favorite feature was the Android dashboard because it shows you how many times you unlock your phone, which would be a lot for me. It would probably be in like the 10,000s in the first day. And the thing I hate the most is they moved the clock to the left because to support the notch. All right. Sorry. All right, that's the next one.
Maps was built to assist everyone, wherever they are in the world. We're now able to automatically add new addresses, businesses, and buildings that we extract from Street View and satellite imagery directly to the map. This is critical in rural areas, in places without formal addresses, and in fast-changing cities like Lagos here, where we've literally changed the face of the map in the last few years. We're adding a new tab to Maps called For You. It's designed to tell you what you need to know about the neighborhoods you care about, new places that are opening, what's trending now, and personal recommendations. We've created a score called Your Match to help you find more places that you'll love. Your Match uses machine learning to combine what Google knows about hundreds of millions of places with the information that I've added. Restaurants I've rated, cuisines I've liked, and places that I've been to. Share the list with your friends to get their input too. You can easily share with just a couple of taps on any platform that you prefer. Then, my friends can add more places if they want to, or just vote with one simple click, so we can quickly choose a group favorite. So now, instead of copying and pasting a bunch of links and sending text back and forth, decisions can be quick, easy, and fun.
Yeah. How many of you folks have tried to plan, like, hey, where are we going to go for dinner? Is the hardest question in a chat. Because everyone just spams links and everything. What do y'all think of that?
I think, well, between the Maps features, the For You features in the Maps and the For You features in the news, they are incentivizing us to give them a ton more information about ourselves, which I'm willingly going to give, but they're going to have a lot more information about us.
I mean, the real question is, do you really think they don't have that information in the first place?
No, yeah, they already have it.
Oh, look at GPS, they're going to this restaurant.
But they did announce that they will be doing more things with the camera as well. The GPS, notably, is pretty crappy in the city, especially when you go into more enclosed areas where it bounces around the buildings. They're working on things where it will triangulate your location based on known images of the area, and it will make it more accurate. So it's not just information about us, it's also information of our surroundings as well.
Yeah, I mean, even learning from the Street View, right? You saw Lagos, just kind of using the street view of a city literally changing over a span of 8-10 years. Just awesome. It's just picking up all those buildings and everything.
Yeah, and then we're just gonna triangulate your location, your elevation as well, right? And I don't remember how they were gonna use that information, but I think as part of Google Lens and being able to identify what you're looking at to help you identify what you're looking at, they are getting a lot more data and doing more with that data.
Yeah, it's, regardless, navigation and all this is so cool to see. I just love the picking dinner thing. That's super dope because then everyone can just vote thumbs up, thumbs down, and done. I believe this is the feature.
Cameras can help us answer questions. Questions like, where am I going? Or what's that in front of me? Our teams have been working really hard to combine the power of the camera, the computer vision, with street view and maps to reimagine walking navigation. You can start to see nearby places, so you see what's around you. And just for fun, our team's been playing with an idea of adding a helpful guide, like that there, so that it can show you the way. VPS, Visual Positioning System, that can estimate precise positioning and orientation. We think the camera can also help you do more with what you see. That's why we started working on Google Lens. Oh, that cute dog in the park, that's a Labradoodle. Lens can now recognize and understand words. With smart text selection, you can now connect the words you see with the answers and actions you need. So you can do things like copy and paste from the real world directly into your phone. The next feature I want to talk about is called Style Match. And the idea is this. Sometimes your question is not, oh, what's that exact thing? Instead, your question is, what are things like it? You're at your friend's place, you check out this trendy looking lamp, and you want to know things that match that style. And now Lens can help you. So the last thing I want to tell you about today is how we're making Lens work in real time. So as you saw in the style match example, you start to see, you open the camera, and you start to see Lens surface proactively all the information instantly. And it even anchors that information to the things that you see. But we're very excited that starting next week, Lens will be integrated right inside the camera app on the Pixel, the new LG G7, and a lot more devices.
Yay!
So those are the features you were talking about, right? With Lens being integrated. It's cool to see them like in place. I mean, I can only imagine things that we could develop and use that data. That just sounds awesome. And we got to see the fox. Yeah. Do you think they're gonna let us change it?
I hope so.
I don't know, maybe it's pretty cool. Clippy.
I mean, if you remember the concept videos they created for Google Glass like 4 or 5 years ago, that looks almost identical to what they were, like, their vision of what Glass was going to do. So I'm not surprised that they're still trying to do the same thing.
Speaking of Google Glass, I did see one person walking around. 2? Yeah, I was like, you 3? The first one I saw, I was like, oh my god, it's Google Glass. And yeah, that was about it.
Was he wearing blue?
Yeah, he was kind of like a shorter guy, like black hair, and then he had like a black Google Glass on.
That was Jesus.
That was Jesus.
Okay.
So like if you saw a guy in blue and his glass matched it and his hat matched it, that's Alan.
He was in
and then there was another guy with the white one.
He was in
so there were 3.
Verge article. He actually made it like a front page saying someone's still wearing glass. So it's so cool. I asked him how his battery kept up. He actually has a battery pack. He carries it from to work. So it's pretty interesting to see. Yeah, so Google Glass is 2018 is still around. It's still around. Dream is not dead. No, I have one too. So the copy and paste, that's gonna be cool. Identifying dogs. I can't wait to go to the park and just do that to every single dog I see. Oh, what dog is that? What dog is that?
I am not bailing you out.
That's right. It's a dog.
It's like these are features that are available in all kinds of other different apps right now, but so it's cool to see like, you know, just how sophisticated it becomes now with Google. Like Bixby on Samsung can do a lot of these things already, but it's not that great. And then like you can also on like Amazon's App Store or their store, their app store, you can also search for like different products and it'll look it up for you. So it's just cool to see like where does it take it from there, because these things are already available, and what is Google going to run with it?
And as I realized that data being collected about everything we're seeing. So yeah.
Hey,
We
Waymo
saw
is the
self-driving
only
cars.
company in the world with a
Through Waymo,
fully
they had a great
self-driving
announcement.
cars. No one in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So the craziest thing is you see them there and you're like, oh, cool, self-driving cars, right? And I kid you not, I think I left I.O. and we just saw one driving down the street. We're like, oh, there's a self-driving car.
It was one of the semis.
Yeah, the
too.
scarier part was when we saw the semi when we were driving in.
Yeah, it was like a self-driving semi-truck. It's
It had no crate on the back, but it was still the semi. I thought it was just a prototype, and then I'm like, oh, well, it's driving down the street.
So I guess it's self-driving cars.
Yeah, going to Mountain View was kind of surreal, just seeing all these different types of tech that are out there. Because it's one thing like reading it or hearing about like, you know, this might be coming to your hometown, but then landing there and seeing like the Waymo vehicle, which we're probably going to see in the video next. It looks just like a regular, like, you know, white soccer mom kind of minivan, you know, but it's got all these weird features on it. So it's got a lot of like weird sensors that are like spinning around, and it kind of looks like the Google Maps vehicle, if you ever saw that. It's got a weird dome on top of it. So I already knew that there was something to anticipate about it, but then when they start releasing like, oh, here's what we're going to do next, like, how are you going to drive a car in the snow? We're like, we figure that out.
If your mom could own a Jaguar.
Some moms can't.
Need to understand and classify objects, interpret their movements, reason about intent, and predict what they will do in the future. And today, I want to tell you about two areas where AI has made a huge impact: perception and prediction. Now, traditionally in computer vision, neural networks are used just on camera images and video. But our cars have a lot more than just cameras. We also have lasers to measure distance and shapes of objects, and radars to measure their speed. And by applying machine learning to this combination of sensor data, we can accurately detect pedestrians in all forms in real time. Our fleet has self-driven more than 6 million miles on public roads. And at Waymo, we use the TensorFlow ecosystem and Google's data centers, including TPUs, to train our neural networks. And with TPUs, we can now train our nets up to 15 times more efficiently. And we can't wait to make our self-driving cars available to more people, moving us closer to a future where roads are safer, easier, and more accessible for everyone.
TPUs, things from the earlier thing, they kind of down about 50 times better. So, yeah, that was kind of the consumer side. A lot of the, as you see, it's a lot of focus. There's some dev things there, but it's really more like, check out this feature, check out this feature. But I know a lot of you are devs in the room, so how about we actually go and kick it up a notch to all the dev stuff? Because there's a lot of cool stuff that came out.
Let's just talk and not show the keynote.
Yeah, talk and show the keynote. All right.
Thank you.
All right. I got it. So,
I'm just looking at the time, Joel. That's all.
with things like Kotlin got announced in 2017, how is now it's 2018? I think 2 Android devs on the panel. How do you feel about Kotlin now that IO 2018 is over? 3.
So I do develop within Kotlin, and it's still a fairly new technology for me. So it was cool to see that there's a lot of excitement for it there, as well as like there's steps moving forward to work with Kotlin. They did have one talk that was about I guess it was just Kotlin development and like ways to be able to be more idiomatic with it. A lot of people were admitting that, yeah, I can just go and program it in Java, and then IntelliJ will go ahead and translate it for me for Kotlin. But even the guy who was there who had written Kotlin, like created the language, was saying that that's not the most elegant way to work with it. So he kind of just went through refactoring and showing you more idiomatic ways to work with it. So it was really cool.
I was just, So I guess, so for me, so I just like building things, and so I've never been the person that's like, oh, I really love this programming language, like C++ or Java is like the best programming language ever. But like once I started actually using Kotlin, like I can legitimately say I love programming with Kotlin. It's really fun to use, and I think some of the things that they announced, like with the Kotlin extensions, that's really cool. Gives you a really nice, clean way of doing things and eliminating boilerplate code, which we all hate. So I think they just further legitimized, just Kotlin development within Android this year.
I can say I used Kotlin before it was 1.0 and before they announced it for Android, and it was super early, but it showed a lot of promise then. When they announced it for Android and I started messing with it after 1.0, it was a lot more polished and a lot more powerful. There were a lot of things that made it way more convenient and easier to use than Java was. As we come into this new year, they announced a handful of new things that will make Kotlin a first-class citizen, more so than Java. All of their rewrites, like you'll see them talk about Jetpack at the same time as Android X. Android X is their rename of all of their libraries. But at the same time, they went through and cleaned up all of the code, added in Kotlin extensions, and almost every single support library now has a Kotlin version of it. They released KTX library, but not just one. They released one for everything. They released one for core, which is the application. They did one for widgets, which is for all the widgets. They did it for every single section of Android to give you cleaner, more telesense, and easier ways to interact with your code. Not only that, there were a lot of things added that Java would not or will never get, mainly because of the fact that it's still considered a low-level programming language and it's still limited by the VM and what Sun is willing to actually add to it, like extensions, which if you go and watch Jake Wharton's talk on KTX, his whole talk is about extensions. Why they have them, why to use them, why they're powerful, how much cleaner the code is. On top of the fact that it also adds in things like your data classes can be written within a couple of seconds compared to having to write a getter setter for every single property. Or inline operators, consumers, you can pull out information out of full classes without having to actually implement the class and pull it out. You can make extensions which can be used once. You make an anonymous function. That function you use everywhere that function is used. It's not recreated in the DEX code every single time you use it. It's directly integrated into data binding, annotation processors, everything. So it's nowhere near a second-class citizen in Android Dev. If you're going to start Android Dev and you've never done Android Dev, I would go so far to say that you would be better off skipping Java and going straight to Kotlin.
Any thoughts around, I think we kind of touched on this, but like the app bundling and then Android Jetpack, kind of answering the quote was, on Android there are 6 ways to do everything, kind of statement. Any thoughts on it? It's kind of opinionated, so it's nice, right?
It's going down. So the talk by, I want to say it was Adam, who went through all of the view layouts, and he's like, back in the day, we had absolute layout, and then everybody laughed. And like he'd list out all the layouts, and basically he crossed out almost every single one of them, except for linear layout and frame layout, and then constraint layout. They've gotten to the point where they're making extremely powerful tools that all the older stuff is being deprecated. Same with the new architecture components. Jetpack's bringing in 3 new architecture components. The worker manager, which is deprecating job scheduler, which was brand new in Lollipop. They're deprecating fragments, so fragments are no longer, the other did. The only place fragments can be pulled now are from the support library, not from the base of Android. Like I said, they gutted it and rewrote it. So the fragments are now deprecated. You can only pull from support libraries. A lot of the stuff is only available in the newer namespaces, and if you don't move to the new namespaces, you will not get updates for your old support libraries. So it's gotten to the point where it's not so much they're going to give you all these tools to do the same exact thing. They're going to give you very powerful tools that will let you do everything with one.
So to kind of keep moving along, the boot demo, Brittney, do you remember how they showed like the snapshot of the keynote thing where they showed 1, 2, 3 and then launched the Android thing? Do you think that's accurate? I know I always hear the sentence like, wait till I try it. Until I see it, I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's always hard to say for sure. Like, I'll see it when I can hold it in my hands and believe it. And I didn't really see if that was a possibility to play around with within the sandboxes, but I think that's what a lot of those those areas within the conference, the sandboxes, what really helped with seeing like, okay, well, you can go at this keynote and see all the fancy stuff, but actually come over here to like the smaller place and come and play around with it and politely tear it apart. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Android had tons of announcements, tons of the talks. All those talks are up. The keynotes are up. Please, I mean, we don't have enough time to cover them all, but great announcements this year.
One thing I'll also say I was really surprised about is like, yeah, we're talking a lot about Kotlin, but I was surprised to come to I/O and see that there was not only conversations about Java, but also C++ in Android development. So there's also some of that out there. I don't know how big of a population it is of those who work with C++ and Java or in Android, but there is also a little bit of that available for you too.
All MDK work is very, very popular with games. So I would be very surprised if they decided to make that not normal. But yeah, they had a big section on Unity stuff, new powerful things for web devs who just make an app out of web views. They had a lot of things, but Kotlin was definitely the main pressing point this year.
So yeah,
Flutter is its own beast.
Yeah, Flutter is another one. Kind of doing app development cross-platform. Dart.
It's different in the fact that a lot of cross-platform dev try to compile down natively, or they try to shove it into a web view. So you have Cordova and Accelerator who try to shove it into a web view. Then you have Xamarin, which cross-compiles it down to native code. What Flutter actually does is it uses OpenGL, which is available on both platforms, and it compiles it natively because OpenGL is a native view. And the reason they chose Dart is because it's not limited to either platform. It is a native compiled down to bytecode, not DEX code, programming language that can be directly converted for OpenGL. So when you see an app in Flutter, they're not actually building UIs, they're actually drawing it on a canvas. So it's different. Like, I expected to go in seeing the same thing redone by Google, but they decided to go a different route, and it's actually quite impressive. I'm not sure that it will be something I personally use, but it's definitely another option. When I was talking to Matt, the main dev for Flutter, he specifically said he used to be huge in the Xamarin community, and it was the only cross-platform system that he had recommended that was actually good, which is true because that's the same thing I had said. But he did say that he was very skeptical when he switched to the Flutter team, and he can quite honestly say he had a lot of fun building it, and it's very, very flexible and powerful. The only thing I want to see is how quickly they'll be able to keep up with UI as it changes each platform.
So one thing I will add with Flutter, like it was pretty cool. I kind of, I tried to stay away from it as long as possible, but there was a lot of chatter about it at I/O. And if you all watched the Android Fireside chat, Dave Burke answered a question about Flutter. And I think Dave Burke, he's the VP of engineering for Android, or maybe just, he's a VP at Google, so pretty high up. But he kind of described Flutter as an experiment, so that doesn't make me feel that confident in Flutter, especially how Google, they tend to give up on some technologies pretty early. So I would say if you do look into Flutter, just be a little bit cautious. I wouldn't dive deep into it right away, but it is an interesting technology.
Actually, that leads me to a good point. So you're probably wondering, okay, Flutter, you were talking about it. Well, how can I use it? There are some great code labs that are actually available to everyone in the room. You can go ahead and run them on your laptop. So I'll share them on the Meetup page after this event. So y'all can take them back, show your coworkers, try them out yourself. But with that, let's kind of kick it into the web stuff, because there's also a lot of cool web stuff there too. Progressive WebEx. So what's it? All major browsers support PWAs now. Service workers.
Service workers, yeah. So service workers supporting all major browsers, as well as they announced Workbox, which I'm not extremely familiar with it, but I believe it helps you with implementing your service workers, so we can start using that in our web development. And then more on the website, I think the message was performance and optimization. So they announced some a new video codec and a JavaScript API that will help you determine, I think it's the media acceptability API or something like that. That will help you determine what media you can serve for your app, for your users. New updates in Lighthouse, V8 engine updates that make React and other frameworks run faster. So a lot of different messaging around optimize and use native JavaScript. There's like new big integer support that they're working on that I don't think was supported in all browsers, but to replace libraries that would do that work for you. So a lot of work around making web apps faster.
They did talk about how Lighthouse went into 2.0 last year when they showed it off, but it had a lot of limitations. Especially if you needed authentication for your application, it required a lot of hoops to jump through to get it to work correctly. Lighthouse now has like a full open API for you to test out your applications and get performance information out of it. The V8 rewrite or improvements affected all major frameworks, including Angular. React was the one that was mostly affected. I want to say it was 112% improvement on render speeds and JavaScript runs. React Redux is also on there as well, so that gets an improvement. They also announced things like improvements to the Chrome DevTools. So now that web is going very heavy into promises, promisify everything, the Chrome DevTools now do async first, meaning that when you step through code, if you do a step into, it will step into your async functions. It also does things like, I can't remember what they called it, but basically you can start typing out stuff into the console and it will pre-execute it for you without you pressing enter. So eager evaluation. So as you modify it, it will continuously reevaluate it without you having to rewrite it, and it will give you a way to quickly modify your queries in console so you can quickly get to what you're looking for. They're also doing things like overrides, so you can save out a site to a file, point to that site, and then as you modify things in Chrome DevTools, refreshes and reloads of the site, save that data, and it pulls from local, so it overrides the actual site, so you can quickly iterate through things in the DevTools without actually having to open an IDE and deploy it locally.
Yeah, huge developments on the web, a lot. I mean, Chrome OS as well. The coolest thing from Chrome OS and Chromebooks, you can install Linux apps now. So actually, I have a picture for it. I went to the code labs and I was actually able to install Firefox on the Chromebook. So the Google engineer there was like, this is kind of wrong, but it works. I installed Steam, I installed Visual Studio Code. It's awesome. So now you can have a cheap development laptop. I see this as a great opportunity for emerging markets. It's going to be awesome for connecting the world. You no longer need this $2,000 dev machine of a MacBook. You can buy a $300 computer and get started, right?
Was that a code lab that walked you through installing Linux, or did you just hack whatever?
I hacked on it, and the guy was like, what are you doing? And it's kind of got me through this.
To give this little perspective for you, if you've heard the buzzword container, which I'm sure almost everybody here has, That is basically what they have done. The way they got Android to run was basically putting it inside of a container emulator for Android and then opening specific ports to the system for it to communicate with the user. They have done the same thing with Linux. They have stripped it down to a container where you put the application inside of it, and then they surface specific ports inside of the container to allow communication with Chrome OS. This allows things like Android Studio to actually boot up Android apps and Chrome OS apps on Chrome OS in real time. So if you've ever used something like Visual Studio to make a Windows app and you press play and it just boots up your app on Windows and like you're using it, it does the same exact thing for Android and Chrome OS applications. It's a huge plus because Chrome OS is extremely locked down. It is very, very secure. They have absolutely no ports open. When it boots up, it scans the OS and it says, oh, this file's corrupt, we're just going to rewrite your whole OS. You save all your data, but it just makes sure that there's no tampering being done. This allows applications to be run in a sandbox instance with no communication with the system except for the specific ports that are open.
Yeah, but with that, I mean, there's Linux Chrome apps, material design, huge engagement with material design, lots of things. So if you're into design, check out, they have a good spec now. Assistant, they have a lot of things in terms of engagement, so like action links, notifications on your phone, and tying into routines. A lot of things around machine learning. The whole back page of this is machine learning on my notes. And then AR core, augmented images, and stuff. So as we're wrapping up the event, we want to turn the questions over to y'all. If anyone has any questions for our panelists, you can also try to answer questions too. Anything?
Did you see them running Android Studio on those Chromebooks?
Yeah. So that's actually what I meant by they can boot up the Android app and the Chrome OS app directly from Android Studio. So when you're running it, you just say debug, and it will say run on Chromebook, and it will boot up the application inside of on your computer. You don't have to do anything else. It's a complete, full version of Android Studio. I saw VS Code running on there, so you could do web dev as well. Basically, any kind of Linux application you can think of will most likely work on it. They also...
Was it laggy at all?
I did not see any lag, no. It seemed to run better than it runs on my Mac, and that's saying not a lot. But at the same time, they did hint at the fact that Linux will not be the last one that gets running support. They've already got most of Windows working, so Windows applications will most likely be coming soon. Mac, I highly doubt we will see those apps come because Apple is very anal about who can run their apps.
Yep. Don't mind me. Any other questions?
You guys talked about Flutter, but I guess there is this layer involved which takes the JavaScript and runs on the machine where React Native gets that phase and it's slightly faster. So how Flutter going to compete with React Native?
So React Native still tries to do exactly the same thing as Xamarin. It tries to compile down to native code, which is DEX code, or in iOS's terms, bytecode. Dart does not try to do that. It never tries to claim to do that. Like I said, it's all OpenGL, so it's drawing on a canvas. Dart is a full down native language that does not try to compile to anything else. So when it compiles to OpenGL, it's compiling a canvas layer with interaction and textures all drawn for you. It's not meant to be a one-to-one compilation down to the system. It's just its own wrapper on top of an OpenGL application. And I can tell you, have you ever tried to make an OpenGL application? It's a pain. OpenGL is very hard to debug. And at the same time, it's very, very flexible, which is why it's used for games. But making just a flat-out 2D UI, it's almost impossible to do in Unity. So the fact that this just does it for you is pretty impressive. Like they said, it is an experiment, but it's trying to solve it in a way that nobody else has.
Yeah, they've also implemented a lot of components for you with Flutter. And one of the things you can do, I believe, if you Google, or not Google, if you go on Play Store and search for like Flutter Gallery, there's an app that I believe the Flutter team released where they have a bunch of demos as to you can kind of get an idea of what Flutter can do on Android.
There's a 2014, like 13.9, saw it first.
It was not a thing. Like Dart was new then, but Dart was not designed for Flutter. Dart was technically designed for web technologies, and it didn't get anywhere. But the coding language was specifically designed for native compilation. So the reason why they chose it was because when they tried to build it in JavaScript or in Java, they hit roadblocks that caused issues with compilation and actually getting the system to work they wanted to. They've actually been working on this, from what I was told, at least 5 years. Every single time they went back to it and tried to use JavaScript or Java, they would hit a roadblock and give up. Eventually they came back and said, we're going to use a different language, and Dart was what they settled on, and it gave them the power to do what they can now.
It was really seamless too. Just like you're suggesting, check out the code labs for it. Like when I was there going through Flutter, it renders very quickly on the phone. And mind you, I was just doing like a little demo app of what they were instructing, but it was pretty much like you press the button to play, and it's just like boom, it's right there. So there's not, if there is anything happening in the middle, I mean I haven't had the ability to take a look at it yet, but it's not as laggy as you would imagine, like he's saying with like Java or working with other like React Native.
Did they disclose which apps they wrote with Flutter that are running on iOS too?
So the one app that they always talked about, no matter who you talked to, was Hamilton. Like it was the #1 app that everybody talked about. It was ridiculous. So if you want to check out an app that's on both, check out that app.
And that's probably written because you don't know, right?
That's the one that they talked about. I don't know if they've done any. I know they have teams working on some, but they didn't really say anything. They always pointed to Hamilton as like the example app to look at.
Yeah, I checked out the app. It's not a great representative of what Flutter can do. It's not great. So, but you can check it out.
I think one question here, and then we'll put it up.
You guys mentioned that fragments are being deprecated.
No, fragments in the core system are deprecated. So they rewrote fragments to the point where they said, we don't want you using the old ones, so you can only import them from support libraries, which is Android X or the version 4.
They basically changed the packaging.
So the original fragments,
They changed the packaging.
They did not.
All right. Well, how about this agree to these 3 engineers, and you guys will talk about it after. Cool. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up here the evening. I know everyone's trying to get the train, so if you're interested in anything that we talked about today and you're interested in a career at Google, Google was actually nice enough to give us swag for everyone in the audience today, so we get a little...
So whether you fill that out or not, I don't care. You're taking something home because I don't want to bring a 4-foot box.
I already carried that in. I'm not carrying it back out.
So yeah, I'll take a picture of this. I'll come back to it if you want it. We'll post the slides after the event. But this is, if you're interested, they'll contact your recruiter. This one is actually important because this is our usual giveaway, but this time...
We have good giveaways.
Huh?
We have good giveaways
We have
this
good
time,
giveaways
so
this
do
time.
that one now.
So...
And if you have any questions, I'm sure we're going to be sticking around.
Yeah.
So you can ask us basically anything. Our names are also on the Meetup, so just look us up as well.